Goggles by Ezra Jack Keats. Ooh, look what Peter found. Those are pretty cool. Archie, look what I found, Peter shouted through the tube. Motorcycle goggles. Archie watched Peter through the hole. He listened and smiled. Peter ran to the hideout and put on the goggles. Aren't they great? He asked. Archie smiled and nodded. Peter said, let's go over to your house and sit on the steps. Archie nodded. They started off. Suddenly, some big boys appeared. Give us those goggles, kid. No, they're mine, Peter said. His dog Willie growled. Urgh. Archie, hold Willie, Peter said. Peter stuffed the goggles into his pocket and put up his fists. Archie gasped. Peter turned to see if something was wrong. The next thing he knew, he was knocked to the ground. Everyone stared at the goggles. Who is going to get the goggles? Peter? The big boys? Before anyone could move, Willie snatched the goggles and ran through a hole in the fence. The big boys chased after him. Meet you at the hideout, whispered Peter. You go this way, I'll go that way. They won't know where we're going. Willie will find us. Peter raced to the hideout. He sank down as low as he could. Footsteps. The big boys. They followed me. Peter held his breath. Waiting. Archie! It wasn't the big boys. It was Archie coming into the hideout. What was that? Archie looked through the hole. There were the big boys, and there was Willie. They could see him. Can you see him? Archie stared at the pipe. Suddenly he spoke. Here, Willie! Through the pipe! Fast! Willie! Look what he brought. Peter peeked through the hole. The big boys were coming closer and closer. Peter took a deep breath. Then he yelled through the pipe, Willie, meet us at the parking lot. Head for the parking lot, one of the big boys yelled. Let's go! Peter and Archie and Willie crept out of the hideout. When they reached the fence, they got up and ran. They got to Archie's house. Archie laughed and said, we sure fooled them, didn't we? We sure did, said Peter, handing him the goggles. Things look real fine now, Archie said. They sure do, said Peter. They're looking through the goggles and they see things. What do you think you would see if you looked through the goggles? Would you see the real things around you, or would you see imaginary fun things that you would imagine in your head? Do you think they would look happier and better with the goggles on, or just the same usual stuff? You could make some goggles and then draw on a paper. What do you see through your goggles? You could look through and either draw what you really see or draw what you would like to see.